Nou, hulle kan ons weer almal in 'n
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I think in the interest of time, we'll start the proceedings. If I may ask everyone to perhaps switch their cameras off and switch their microphones off. My name is Vishal Premlal. I'm the National Director for TIPA, and I will coordinate the event for today. We have a talk on waste tires, and that's facilitated by the department. Aidan Bowers is the individual. He is the project manager within the Waste Bureau who will facilitate that presentation. Just in terms of a few house rules, I think just from a procedure point of view, if you can all stay muted throughout the presentation. Aidan will present. There'll be an opportunity for you to provide comment should you wish to in the chat box, and we'll address those comments towards the end of the presentation. At the end of the presentation, there'll also be an opportunity for you to raise your hand and ask questions. So Aidan will prepare or run through the presentation. If I may request on the question side to try and keep the questions contextual to the topic. Anything that may be unrelated, we'll take, but know that we may not have those answers here. We could always get back to you in terms of those answers. Beyond that, you will see during the course of the event that there would be a survey or two running. And this is really to test your appetite in terms of where we're going as an association and what you would like to hear, as future topics as well. Furthermore, if there is an opportunity and you identified certain malpractices that you need to record somewhere, maybe relating to waste tires as well, feel free. TIPA has got a whistleblower hotline, and we will channel that, to the relevant authorities. It can be done anonymously as well. Without further ado, I want to introduce my team that's here with me. I've got together with myself, it's Mariki Smith. I think we all know her. And then, of course, I have as well my associational reps. One for the coastal region, that's Kugan Pata, who is on the call as well. And of course, for the inland region, we've got Moipone and Nyambi. Feel free to engage your associational rep should you have any queries, relating to the waste tires or anything else relating to TIPA. Without any more, I'm going to pass on straight to Aidan Bowers, who will lead us through the presentation, and we'll take it from there. Over to you, Aidan.
Thank you, Vishal, and good morning, everyone. Let me load up the presentation.
Let's proceed, Aidan.
You can see that? You can see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Okay. All right. Thank you. And good morning to everyone. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak to everyone today. I'm here on behalf of the Waste Management Bureau, or we also call ourselves the Bureau or the Waste Bureau. And what we want to talk about today is how we can work together to build a compliant, reliable and sustainable waste tire system in South Africa. And I think we understand that there maybe are many dealers or some dealers that are not familiar with the waste tire regulations. So this session is really to raise that awareness on how waste tires are managed and to encourage all dealers collection points. And we'll get into some of the definitions in the presentation. But we would like everyone sort of involved at the front end of the waste tire value chain to register with us. And we want to convey how easy it is to comply with the regulations and what type of support we are able to offer dealers, collection points, and the like. So what I'm going to run through quickly is why do we manage tires? Why does managing tires matter? Some of the legislation that governs waste tire management, the functions of the Bureau, the waste tire value chain. So, what the impact of these waste tires being formally managed is. Then we'll give a quick overview, the kind of boring stuff, what's in the waste tire regulations, but I think it's important to raise awareness on some of the definitions and the management requirements and the role of dealers and collection points in the system. We'll cover quickly the registration with the Waste Bureau. Then, what happens if dealers don't register? And that's really related more to the impact on the system than enforcement. And then, closing out that, the messages that we're here to help, and we want to encourage everyone to join into the system. So why does managing tires matter? It's because tires don't go away. They're so durable that they don't compact and they don't degrade in landfills. And when you compact them into a landfill and full waste over the top of them, the action of that compaction brings the tires to the surface. So the tires have actually been banned from landfill, which means you can't take them to a dump site or a landfill site. And they also can be a health hazard and a risk if they're burned or dumped. So that's where we come in. The Waste Bureau runs a national collection and processing system. But of course, none of it works unless the dealers, yourselves, and various stakeholders at the collection side are part of it. And obviously the collection of waste tires is the first link in the chain. So there is legislation governing the waste tires, the waste tire management. So there is what we call the waste tire regulations. Those were prepared in 2017. There have been some recent amendments in 2024, but largely the 2017 regulations still apply. And those fall under the environmental management laws. So that's the National Environmental Management Act and the National Environmental Management Waste Act. And this legislation really spells out how tires must be classified, stored, collected, and processed. What's more important, or most important, is tire dealers, like several of you on the call, I assume, will be, must first register with the Waste Bureau. And this isn't meant to create admin. It's designed to create a national trackable system so tires don't go missing and that we can manage this problem in a sort of formal manner. So what is a Waste Management Bureau? Who are we? We're a unit within the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment, so that's DFFE. We are the national custodian for waste tire operations. We manage the full value chain from registration to coordinating transporters, leasing depots where we store the tires that are collected, and then we work with processors and recyclers that use the tires. And the system is actually funded through a extended producer responsibility scheme. This is what we call a government managed scheme. Producers and importers of tires, looking at that diagram on the right, pay an EPR fee per kilogram of tire that is brought onto the market. That gets paid to SARS. SARS pays that into the National Revenue account of Treasury, and then Treasury disperses that to the Waste Bureau to run the entire waste tire operation. So in other words, when we collect tires from dealers and from collection points, there's no payment at that point. The payment is made at the start of the chain. In other words, when tires come onto the market, and then the Waste Bureau uses those to manage the system, mainly through contractors procured through the supply chain system. So what is the waste tire value chain? How it works in practice is tires are collected from dealers and other collection points. So what other collection points are involved? Transport companies, fleet managers, mines, farms, and the like. And then we also have informal collection points, which may be illegal dump sites, illegal dumping on properties, roadsides, landfills, and the like. These are then transported to depots, which are temporary storage facilities for waste tires. From there, tires are processed or recycled by licensed partners. We call them maybe not licensed partners, but partners that are registered with the Bureau. And so, the downstream processing of tires is fundamental to the system working. And to ensure that we have a viable processing sector, we obviously need a consistent flow of tires into the system, and that's why the sources of waste tires are so important, and why we need to ensure as many people that are producing waste tires are registered with the Bureau. So in a bit more detail, what do we do? So on collections and transport, we have 29 transporters procured at the moment. Those are six in KZN, 4 in the Eastern Cape, 1 in the Free State, 1 in the Northern Cape, 1 in Mpumalanga Northwest, 5 in Limpopo, 4 in the Western Cape, and 8 in Gauteng. And there is some overlap. Some transporters do work in multiple provinces. Like I said, all these are procured through by the Waste Bureau, and that's for what we call primary transport, which is collecting from dealers and collection points, and secondary transport, which is taking tires from depots and sending them to processors. In terms of storage, we have what we call waste tire depots. There are 26 across the country currently operating, and those two are managed by depot operators, typically small businesses, that are also procured through a competitive process by the Waste Bureau on a regular basis. And then downstream, where the tires go for recycling or processing, these are private entities that are registered with the Bureau. Just to distinguish between a recycler and a processor, recyclers reuse tires without changing their form substantially. So they basically use the tire as is. They may cut the sidewalls off to make it usable in a different sort of context, but it is a substantially similar to the tire when it comes from a dealer. And a processor uses the tire and changes its form substantially. So typically they may be burnt as an alternative fuel source. There's a process called pyrolysis where the tires are burnt or incinerated without the presence of oxygen to create a set of products. The tires could be crumbed, which means shredding them down to a very fine crumb, and then those are used in various downstream applications. So that's what the Waste Bureau sort of oversees in terms of the detail of the operations. This gives an overview of the collection and the collection points and locations of depots. The concentric rings indicate the distance from a depot to collection points. So it gives an indication of the sort of density and where most of the collection points are distributed that are registered with us currently. So this gives an overview of how many we have on our books, 2,463 across the country. I think what's important and again what's driving this engagement session today is we're only servicing around about 30 to 45% regularly. And one of the primary reasons that we've established for this low servicing rate is collection points not giving the tires to the Waste Bureau transporters, but rather giving them or selling them to unknown recipients outside of the formal waste tire system, which is obviously, again, problematic in terms of managing the value chain and especially the supply to downstream processes. These are some pictures of waste tire storage. So on the left, you have a aerial view of a waste tire storage facility in Mossel Bay. You can see there are stockpiles of tires. Those represent stockpiles, and there are regulations governing the size of those stockpiles, and primarily to ensure that fire hazards are minimized by ensuring there's a sufficient gaps between both boundaries and tire stockpiles and within the site between stockpiles. So there is a formal plan at each depot to stockpile tires to ensure that fire risk is minimized. On the right is a photograph of a typical depot showing how tires are stacked and how we try and manage the stockpiles being compliant with the fire break regulations. You can see there we have some demarcations so that we ensure we maintain that fire break. Then in terms of processing and recycling, this gives us gives an overview of where the waste tires end up, so processing and recyclers. There are two types of recycling processes. The one is material recovery. We have 5 material recycling companies that we supply to, and we have 17 product reuse companies. We supply 3 cement kilns from an energy recovery perspective, and we also supply 3 pyrolysis plants with tires. In terms of material recycling, that's related to crummers. So the crumbing plants fall under there. They're not recovering it for energy, they're converting it into a different product. So what do we mean by recycling? This is a typical use for recycling. There are other uses. They're used in retaining walls, to also in dam installations. They're also used for drainage applications. But you can see the tires are substantially in their original form. And then this is an example of a pyrolysis plant. These are reactors. I won't go into it. It's quite a complex process, but what it effectively does is converts tires into 3 main products. It turns it into carbon black, which can be used in various industries. I think and then you have a fuel oil, which can be used for energy. It's a diesel type oil, and then you recover the metal as well. And you can see here why we say this is substantially changing the tire. It takes a whole tire and converts it into those 3 products, which no longer resemble the original form of the tire. Okay, moving into the waste tire regulations, which govern the way we manage the tires. What the waste tire regulations cover is how tires are classified, what can be done with waste tires, how they must be handled, stored, and transported, who must register, which includes obviously collection points and dealers. The regulations aim to prevent illegal dumping and environmental damage, but they also aim to build a working economy around waste tires. Just moving to some of the key definitions so that we're all clear around when we say what is a waste tire dealer, what is a collection point. And these are not all the definitions included in the waste tire regulations. I didn't want to go through every one, but these are the pertinent ones, I think, for today. So collection points means areas of a business from which waste tires are derived, or a commercial entity where waste tires may be collected, including mines, farms, and tire dealers. Register with the Bureau means a submission of information by a person to the Bureau in order for particulars of that person to be recorded in its database, and then for the purpose to administer these regulations. A tire dealer means a person or entity that distributes or otherwise deals commercially in tires. And then what do we mean by a waste tire? A waste tire can be a new tire, a used tire, a retreaded, or unworthy tire. So there are a wide range of potential tire types. I mean, a new tire could be one that has been rejected at the factory for being out of specification. Tires that are not suitable to be retreaded, repaired, or sold as a part-worn tire and not fit for its original intended use. So that is the definition, I guess, of when a tire becomes a waste tire. In terms of the purpose of the regulations, they're to regulate the management of waste tires. And then, important under Section 4 is that no person may manage waste tires and manage in a manner which does not comply with the waste tire regulations. So anyone who's producing waste tires must comply with the waste tire regulations. No person may recover or dispose of a waste tire in a manner that is likely to cause pollution or the environment or harm to health and well-being. In other words, illegally dumping tires or illegally burning tires or the like is also in contravention of the regulations. Like I said earlier, the disposal of waste tires at waste disposal facilities is no longer allowed. So that's also a dual role of municipalities who run landfill sites to prevent that from happening as well, and to provide a facility for the temporary storage of those tires. No person may recover any financial contribution in terms of a waste tire management plan from a subscriber to the plan unless that plan is authorized by law. I'm not going to get into the details of waste tire plans and industry plans because I think that doesn't change what we are talking about today. But it is something that is important that in terms of financial contributions, you shouldn't be being requested to make a financial contribution outside of a plan. And then another important aspect of the regulations is that the export of waste tires in whatever form cannot be done unless the exportation of such waste tires is authorized by the minister in writing. So anyone who wants to export waste tires has to apply to the Bureau and get an export license from the minister. Then finally, around storage of the waste tires and pertinent to collection points and dealers is that the waste tire storage area for a dealer shall not exceed 500 square meters. And then the part 6, I didn't go into the details. There are obviously offences and penalties applicable for non-compliance. But the purpose again is to raise awareness that these regulations exist, not to talk too much about the penalties. Okay, so moving on. Excuse me. To the role as dealer, as your role as a dealer or a collection point. The role is quite simple. It's to separate usable tires from waste tires, not to give those tires to informal players or collectors that are not part of the Waste Bureau, and then to register with us so we can plan your pickups. You don't need to shred the tires or transport them. You just need to hold them until we collect them. So it is a legal requirement, but it's also the right thing to do. I think this is the key message that we want to get across is registration with us and entering the formal plan is a legal requirement, but it's also about professionalism, responsibility, and doing the right thing. So a working waste tire system means regular pickups, safe handling, and fewer dump tires in the environment. And as well, this is a message that can get through to the customers that we are part of a national waste tire recovery system, and there's an entire economy built around the management of waste tires. And fundamentally, waste tires are also a resource, and that's an important aspect. By illegally dumping them or discarding them, that resource goes to waste. In terms of registration with the Bureau, the process is simple and quick. You can contact us at the Waste Bureau at dffe.gov.za or nbuthelezi@dffe.gov.za. We will be happy to share this Vital with you and TIPA members and others on the call, so that you can have the contact email addresses. After the contacting us, we'll send you that registration form. You'll then receive, once that registration form is completed, you'll receive a Waste Bureau ID that we will generate. You'll then have a transporter allocated, and then regular collections will be scheduled with the transporter. We also have regional coordinators in each province that will facilitate those, the form being completed and the allocation of a transporter. So what happens if dealers don't register? When tires aren't registered in the system, a few things happen. Collections can't be scheduled, tires often go missing or end up illegally dumped, and the whole value chain breaks down. So this isn't about, this isn't about enforcement or punishment or anything like that. It's about encouraging full participation, because, it's important that everyone participates. We have one system that allows us to then it allows us to have a viable, long-term, sustainable processing sector, as well as an efficient upstream collection and dispatching system as well. So we are here to help. You're not on your own. The Waste Bureau has regional coordinators all around the country. They can help with registration. They can help with miscollections. They can help even with troubleshooting of depot issues. Just one mail or a call and someone will help. And we are here to support you. And I think, again, to reiterate, at the point of collection, there's no cost, there's no paperwork outside of signing the collection form that says you have given our transporter X number of tires. Apart from that, minimal paperwork. And like we said, we're one email away or one phone call away, depending on where you are situated. We can distribute the contact details of all our regional coordinators. So recap, what can you do today? You can check whether your dealership is registered. If not, please register as soon as you can, and we'll help you out with that. You can keep your tires aside for collection, and then reach out if you need help. Every tire you handle correctly keeps us and South Africa greener and cleaner. And that's it. Thank you for your time. I think we obviously appreciate and value the role of dealers and collection points in the system, and we'd like to work together with you to build a tire sector that's safe, sustainable, and compliant. And please feel free to reach out at any time. We are here to help you. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much, Aidan. That was quite informative. I have no doubt that there's going to be questions. I see someone's already attempted to raise their hand. There's a few in the box as well. Perhaps just from a procedure point of view, what I'll do is I'll address the ones with the hands up first, and then we'll take the ones in the box. So currently, Liana Shaw, over to you. Liana, I think you're muted. Liana, you've got a hand raised. You still good to ask a question? Okay, she's dropped her hand. That's fine. Let's take the question in the box. Hi, this is from Joan Leroux. I'm registered with the Waste Tyre Bureau. We constantly battle for our waste tires to be collected. And when they come, they also refuse to collect carcasses that are deformed. We're situated in the Northwest Province. Aidan, you wanna tackle that one?
Yes, I mean, I think the point of call is to report this to our regional coordinators, so that we can then follow up. I think any operation, and our operation is no different, is we do have breakdowns of I guess we do have issues that we need to deal with, and sometimes poor service, and all we can say is please report it to our regional coordinator. They're here to assist and to try and resolve those problems. We do meet as a senior management team as well. There are 3 project managers for 3 different parts of the country, to attend to what may be structural issues around availability of transporters in certain regions. That we then can deal with it. I mean, to deal with it now is obviously difficult, Michelle, because I don't have the details. But my advice would be please contact our regional coordinator, and we also have a senior manager if there's a intervention required at a more senior level as well.
Okay, fantastic, Aidan. Thank you for that. Alternatively as well, what you can do is channel the queries through our office.
Yes.
And we'll pass that on to the relevant people within the department. Let's have a look at a few more. I see there's another question of similar nature. Hi, I have the same issue in Limpopo. They only collect what they can resell. So I'm assuming we'll follow a similar process for that one. A question from Jasmina.
Vishal, can I just say something
Go ahead.
on that? Sorry. Yeah. So I mean, this is an important point around our transporters. The transporters have no the transporters are paid for collection of tires, and they're bringing the tires to us. So there should be no, we only collect what we can sell, because that shouldn't come into, if I heard that question right, that shouldn't come into it, and that's not something that a dealer should be taking up with the transporter, but that should certainly be reported to us, because we can't have a system where tires are what we call leaking between a collection point and a depot. So those kind of instances, if there's an indication by one of our service providers that that is happening, it needs to be reported to us, please, so that we can then follow up.
Thank you for that, Aidan. That's a very important point, actually, because that's how we identify the gaps and the weaknesses in the system. I see Liana's got her hand up again. Liana, over to you. Liana, you're muted. Okay, I'll proceed with the question in the chat box. Jasmina Shiba, how many pyrolysis plants are there in South Africa? Aidan?
At the moment, there are 3. That's what we reported here. Yeah, there are 3 at the moment. 2 that have been operating for some time, 1 that has just been commissioned and are still in the testing phase.
Okay, fantastic. Then we have a question about earth movers and tractor tires. What about earth movers and tractor tires? That's from Mornay Viviers.
Okay. Again, we do collect sort of oversized tires, or the off-the-road tires, if we call them. There are challenges depending on the size, obviously, in terms of being able to collect them. So what we would typically do is again send our regional coordinator to go and have a look at what you have, or we would interact with you in terms of either photographs or a video, and then advise on how we would enable a collection of that tire. Yeah, so yeah, it's a special case. Obviously, we the contractors and transporters we have vehicles that are typically used to collect smaller tires. So we would need to consider what size and the volume of tires or number of tires you have, and then come up with a plan to service you. So again, I think work through our coordinator depending on where you are, to then make those arrangements and to see what we can manage.
All right, fantastic. I see we've got 2 hands up. It's Liana again and Masopa. Liana first, in that order.
Okay, I hope you can hear me now.
There we
can.
Can
You hear me? Okay, thank you. I wanted to ask, going forward, will the Waste Bureau continue to assume this role of, tire collection and the subsequent processes, or is there a bigger plan in place?
Liana, I see our CEO has got his hand up. He may want to answer that. I'm happy to answer it, but I don't know, Masopa, do you want to answer it? I saw Masopa's hand up. But
sure.
Yeah, go for it, Masopa.
Thanks, Vishal. Morning, everyone. I thought I would just sort of augment some of the points that Aidan has made, and Liana, I will attempt to answer your question as well. So the first one, I think, Vishal, is there needs to be an acknowledgement from our side that the mining sector has unfortunately traditionally been underserviced. There's a separate engagement process that we are having with Minerals Council around how we address the backlog of off-the-road tires that exist in different nodes of the country. Yeah, there's some progress that we are making in terms of that, but I think it is fair to acknowledge that the off-the-road tires, because of their size and sort of the complications around their handling and processing, is an area of let's say underservice, but one that we are taking up directly with the mines themselves and Minerals Council. Practically what this means, though, is that it is an area where we need to sort of engage on it on a case-by-case basis when off-the-road tires need to be serviced. But the balance of the value chain and tire categories should effectively be available for us to service, including agri and others. So it's just, let's say, that one exception. The other one to note is that the scope of our responsibility stems from tires generated from 2012 onwards. And with the mines, there are also issues of historic stockpiles. So when we look at, let's say, the volume of tires on the mines, it's probably about a 50-50 split between pre-2012 and post-2012. And it does speak to that element of the mines themselves have had challenges in terms of dealing with this particular waste stream. But, like I said, there's some actions that we are taking together with Minerals Council where we'll be able to provide an element of short-term relief, as well as some plans that sort of begin to deal with the backlog sustainably. In terms of the sort of 2012 pre and post 2012 data is an important one, because historic stockpiles that were generated post 2012 fall outside of our ambit. That shouldn't, I guess, be the case in terms of the sort of people on the call and tire dealerships dealing with sort of new waste generation. But I thought it is important for us to just draw this line in the sand that, certain historic stockpiles are dealt with separately, and they need to submit abatement plans and a plan on how they're going to effectively work away at those stockpiles. And that is dealt with outside of the scope of this discussion. In terms of sort of the way forward for the sector, Liana, you may have seen in early June that the Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment withdrew the current industry waste tire management plan. Effectively, what that plan represented was subordinate legislation that speaks to effectively providing a framework on how waste tires would be dealt with. There were, and it's a plan that is in place for a 5-year period, and a year in, there was an opportunity to assess whether or not, some of the structural challenges with it could be lived with, or it was better to withdraw the plan now, make the necessary improvements, and then ultimately issue a plan which was stronger. The waste tire sector is also one which is historically litigious, and one where we wanted to ensure that there was sort of clarity, at least for the medium term, around how it would work. And the intention is not for the Bureau to be the active player in terms of executing waste tire operations. As Aidan said, all of the current operations and all elements of the value chain are executed through contractors, so providing some opportunity for private sector participation of different size and scale. And what the now withdrawn industry waste tire management plan made provision for was something called a regional implementer, who would effectively provide third-party logistics as well as warehouse management services, which are, let's call it, relatively vanilla services available on the market in 3 regions of the country, or cutting up the country into 3 regions and doing that. So, I can't preempt what the new plan will look like, but it's not intended for government's role in terms of this ecosystem effectively to be enhanced. It is one where we see opportunity for the private sector to execute parts of it potentially more efficiently and effectively than we do and can, and to leverage off of that where possible. I don't know if that answers your question, but
it does. Thank
hopefully,
you.
no problem. Back to you, Vishal.
Thank you very much. Very good explanation there, Masopa. Appreciate that. Jean Leroux, you've got your hand raised, and I think we've also got followed. Yeah, that's right. Headley Judd. Jean Leroux, over to you.
Morning. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes. So my question or complaint rather is, we've been registered with the Waste Bureau, and we are struggling extremely a lot to have our tires collected. And I've sent emails. I see someone sent me the email where I should send the complaint. I have done that. And then still we need to phone them every second week to come and collect. And when these drivers come onto site, they start to load the truck tires first. First of all, they come with a whole full truck after 3 weeks. Then they start to load the truck tires. And then if there's space, they will take some of the passengers, and then tires that has been deformed, they refuse to load them. So I want to know, when we have these kind of issues, we need to have a channel that we can send complaints to or report these guys.
John, I think that platform is there. Maybe what we do is we start working, with the TIPA whistleblower hotline, put some evidence behind it, submit it, and then we submit this through to the department for investigation. I think, maybe let's start channeling some of these concerns, in an effort to hopefully streamline and improve the process. But maybe that's an opportunity. Aiden, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yes, I think depending on where you are, again, I think your first point of contact are our regional coordinators. They can take your call and then, get to the bottom of that particular issue. And yeah, again, we have the contact emails that are obviously monitored, and we will also share. If you really aren't coming right, there are like I said, we have senior managers as well. But yeah, first point of call, regional coordinators. Our coordinators are very experienced and are familiar with our transporters. But yeah, in terms of sort of malfeasance or malpractice or that kind of behavior from a transporter, then yes, you're welcome to also then go through TIPA.
Okay. I've got the evidence, emails that I've sent to the regional coordinator. Nothing has happened. More than one email as well. So it's time to step up to someone else because nothing is happening. This is in the Northwest Province, by the way.
Okay, thanks for that, Jean. I see, Headley, before I pass over to you, Masopa, you've raised your hand. I'm assuming you want to respond in context if you want to come in.
Yes, thanks, Jean, for bringing this to our attention. I do think there's probably a couple of things that we need to do post this session. The first one is probably to share sort of the list of regional coordinators and the different regions, as well as their contact details, as well as the point of escalation for each of the regions. Fundamentally, there should be no element of, let's say, post-2012 waste tires that are generated that you are not being serviced on. There should be no need to make an alternative arrangement, because ultimately, like Aiden said in the opening statement, that this is a service that the public has paid for through the collection of the waste tire levy at the point of importation and production. Fundamentally, from our perspective, we're also concerned in terms of limiting the case of leakage. Aiden has made the environmental case, but there's also a health and safety case in terms of tires that are leaking out of the system for reuse that are not appropriate for that use, which I don't think assists yourselves as dealers trying to sell new tires and assists sort of the general public safety element in terms of how we manage the sector. So this is something that we take very seriously. And as Vishal has also said, the whistleblower hotline from the TIPA side is an available avenue, but fundamentally there shouldn't be a pick and choose, a non-servicing of particular elements of that ecosystem. And if it's something that we need to relook at from a process perspective, we will do that. So thank you for bringing it to our attention, and we will share, let's say, that contact list, and yes, if you can please escalate it to the regional project manager for the Northwest, who also is on this call, Kashiwe, in terms of your particular case. Thanks.
Fantastic, Masopa. Thank you so much for that collaboration. This is the type of collaboration we talk about when we say, let's get the department closer to, the business, and these types of real cases are so important to address firsthand. Headley, over to you.
Thanks, Vishal. Good morning, everybody. And thanks, Aidan and Masopa, for facilitating here today. I think, however, there are a couple of questions that really beg to be posed, and perhaps the answers won't be here today. First and foremost, let's just deal with the last one that was discussed, which was the collection of tires where the transporters don't collect what is available. That's not a new problem. It's been one that's been ongoing since 2012, since the inception of this entire process. And I really believe that we need to recognize some of the efforts that have been taken by the Bureau to alleviate this. However, there definitely needs to be some decisive action taken and/or examples made of this kind of indiscretion amongst the transporting community. And no disrespect to anybody at all, not the transporters nor the Bureau, but I think this has gone on now for a long time. It's not new, and it's still rearing its head on a regular basis. However, that's the one part, and I don't know if there's even a need for a response to it other than to note it. The second part is to go back to the withdrawal of the plan by the minister, and we use the term plan loosely. Is there an expectation in the duration that the revision of this plan is going to take? What are the expectations from the Bureau's perspective in the review of this plan? And the last part of my question, and I know it sounds like a complex question, is what is the future for processing of volume in this country, and how is the plan likely to address that? So, guys, I know I've given you a mouthful here, but perhaps you can give us some assurance, because it's all very well collecting the tires, it's all very well stockpiling them, it's all very well the transporters collecting or not collecting, but what are we doing with this volume? You've shown us that there are about 26 odd processors across the country doing various processes. Are they able to cope with the volume, or aren't they? What is the volume that they're currently managing, and what's stockpiling? So I'm looking at it from an environmental perspective, not the business perspective or political perspective. Thank you.
Thanks, Headley. Aidan, between you and Masopa, I'm sure I'll leave that to either of you.
Masopa, do you want to go through? Yeah.
No problem. Thanks for that, Headley, and I will try and answer all of them. Please let me know if I miss or skip any of them. Talking to the waste collection challenge and the sort of discretion or indiscretion from a transporting community perspective, There's two interventions that we are looking to bring over the sort of next 12 months. And the first one is to sort of move away from the current system where the relationship in terms of collections exists purely between the dealer and the transporter. And when the Bureau sees it is when there's a breakdown in the system, lack of collections, not full collections, transporters potentially collecting only that which can be resold, etc. And the sort of other systemic sort of challenge with the current process is that, the Bureau then ultimately sees the transaction at the point of invoicing, which is not ideal. So what we're looking to do is to bring in a system which manages all parts of that value chain. It's largely developed and requires some enhancements, but we're looking to sort of implement that during the year and move something more closer to a PO type of system, which then effectively orders a set of work already sort of specifying what is meant to be collected in terms of different tire categories and types. And then that becomes something that gets fulfilled by the transporter. And then that matching happens on our side to ensure that we understand what exactly is being executed in the field. The second part to that is that, the current system works on estimates. And it raises the challenge where transporters, I can imagine, are wary to fetch, let's say, scrap tires while trying to understand what is it that I will be paid for in terms of these scrap tires, because there's an estimation that exists in terms of whole used tires. And what we're moving towards in terms of the new depots is moving towards a system where we are no longer working on estimations. So every depot having a weighbridge and everything being measured in order for us to be able to control it. Happy to engage further on how is it that we sort of deal with the issue of leakage and the frustrations faced by dealers, because we are seeing this element of sort of people voluntarily opting out of the system, and we're trying to understand, is this just pure frustration or what is happening? And we'd love to sort of have a more detailed bilateral with yourselves around it, because from a trend perspective, it doesn't necessarily make sense. And then to then talk about the plan. So the process of the plan, I think you are very familiar with Headley and sort of the elongated process that it took for the plan to be developed, somewhere around 4.5 years, including sort of multiple gazetted public consultation processes. And ultimately what we ended up with was a plan which I think in principle was saying the right things. We're trying to develop a local processing sector. We're trying to make sure that that local processing sector is sustainable in the long term. And ultimately, for the system not to be based on ever increasing numbers of tires going into long-term storage. I guess the thing to understand about that, based on your question on local processing capacity, is that it does not deal with the whole, all the different tire categories equally. We have effectively two tire categories that are in demand. Like Aidan said, we have 3 or 4 pyrolysis plants, some more crummers, and all of those are looking only at radial truck tires, 315 and 385 radial truck tires, because of the, let's say, relatively higher yields that they're able to get based on those tires, as well as the sort of limited amount of synthetic material that sort of ends up in the end product. So there's very little demand for nylon truck tires, for agricultural, motorcycle. There's some that deal with solids, but a very few. And at the moment, it's only really in terms of local processing, the cement kilns that take passenger and 4x4. So there's a multitude of categories that require processing and scrap, and others which are not necessarily in demand, where you have some tire categories that move and others that effectively go into storage for the long term because there's no local processing or even international demand per se from the export side of the equation. This is not necessarily something that needs the industry waste tire management plan to be in place in order to address. So if you looked at the last set of tenders that were released in terms of waste tire processing, they began to address what we felt were the structural issues that inhibited the development of the sector. Some were in terms of, let's say, tenure and security of supply, where I think the tender from 2017, 2018 was a 5-year term. That's not sufficient for greenfield submissions to be able to raise capital and pay back sort of senior debt. So the tenure in terms of the one that went out in December and closed in February was a 10-year period. There was a move away from a single a rate being applied across all tire categories to effectively differentiation or bidding for different rates for different tire categories, while understanding that the complexity of dealing with OTRs at a per kilogram level is different to passenger and 4x4 and radial truck tires. So creating that element of stimulus for dealing with tire categories that have not traditionally been in demand. I mean, some of that will have to be supported through elements of pre-processing like shredding, which we don't currently have, in order to make it sort of more viable for processors. But then we hit a budgetary issue in terms of the amount of funds that we have available. But these are the things that we're looking to address in terms of the new plan. The intention is not for it to be a elongated process, but there will be a formal public consultation and period of comments that is made available. In the processing tender that we ran, and it's unfortunate that sort of the withdrawal of the plan means that the procurement processes that were undertaken sort of in the latter part of last year will need to be cancelled and reissued. Had a very strong turnout. I can't talk to the quality of it because we didn't evaluate them, but there were over 80 submissions of current processors, let's say retendering, as well as new entrants looking to come into the market, both in terms of brownfield facilities as well as greenfield facilities. So I don't think there's a lack of potential for the development of a local processing sector. It's just the manner in which we stimulate it and support it while addressing sort of the structural issues that inhibit the development of a emerging sector like that. We could probably have a discussion for the next hour and a half just on this particular thing, but happy to delve into it in more detail when we look at the bilateral around the collection challenges in that system. But ultimately, it's not meant to be an elongated process. It's an opportunity to refresh some of the data that was in the industry waste tire management plan from last year, which was a bit outdated because, like I said, the process of developing it was lengthy. And it led to this sort of dichotomy when we issued new procurement, new tenders for a number of different services, processing, transport, depot operations, and the data that was there didn't match the data that was in the plan because we were using the more current data, and that's not necessarily an ideal situation. Yeah, I hope I answered sort of most of what you asked, and if I missed anything, please feel free to raise it again. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Masopa. That was great. I think you covered most of it. The fundamental is that there is a road to follow here, and yeah, let's just see where it goes. Good luck to you.
Thanks so much, Hedley and Masopa, for the response. It is obviously quite detailed and quite technical in nature, and I'm sure, a bit complex in terms of understanding it if you don't understand what's happening firsthand, but be that as it may. Thanks, Masopa, for clarifying that. Let's see, more questions in the box. Lebogang, what is the process if I would like to be a processor? Aiden?
Yeah, the process is to go through the tender process. So we have processes on our books that were in the system historically. Like Masopa said, we have now significant interest and a lot of unsolicited approaches from potential processors to request tires, to the point where we actually had to put a stop to new entrants through sort of what we used to call an allocation or a sort of supply. It wasn't even called a supply agreement. We called it an allocation because we weren't able to commit contractually to supplying. And with that significant increase in demand, which really followed the publishing of the plan, we have to go through that competitive bid process to allow all entrants, whether they sort of contacted us separately or whether they want to enter it through the tender process, that we had to manage it in that formal way. Like we said, that tender the tender will be refloated in the near future, because the previous one was in terms of the plan that's now been withdrawn. So it'll be through the tender process. There's nothing that stops new entrants from entering the market, but our advice would be to look at the previous terms of reference, see what kind of conditions had to be met in order to be recognized, or let's say qualify as a potential bidder, so that you could be prepared for when the new tender is floated. But yes, it would be through the formal tender process. We don't do sort of ad hoc or unsolicited allocations of tires.
Thanks, Aiden. Masopa, I'm assuming you're responding in context. Go for it.
Yeah, just to add on to what Aiden said, I think the short answer is, if the plan had not been withdrawn, the window of opportunity for new processing submissions would be closed for some time. Because like I said, we're doing sort of much longer term allocations. The tender itself makes provision for the separate assessment of existing processes or brownfield operations versus greenfield operations and what one needs to submit. So trying to stimulate both. But, I guess the silver lining in the withdrawal of the plan and the necessary then cancellation of the procurement processes that ran is that a window of opportunity across all of these services exists for everyone again. And like Aiden said, you can look at the previous tender that was issued in mid-December last year from the Waste Bureau. If you just Google waste tire processing 2024, you'll find it. And that will give you a very good indication of what we're going to come back to market with again very soon. Because effectively we're just tweaking based on the necessity to cancel the tenders as they referred to an industry waste tire management plan, which is now withdrawn. But the majority of what you see in those tenders will then look pretty much the same when we go out to market again. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Masopa. Fano Masia, I see you've got your hand raised. You want to raise a question? You want to ask a question? Go for it.
Yes, thank you. It's a follow-up question on what Lebo has raised, looking at the excessive number or amount of waste that is out there and the process of or the processing or recycling plant there's a huge gap. How do you plan on closing? And what are you looking at in terms of the number of processor for one to close the gap? Because I'm just looking at the large amount of the waste tires that is out there as compared to the number of processors. You're sitting with 3 or 4 that you have mentioned, and the tender is closed and might happen once. What are you looking at in terms of the number of processors that you will be onboarding?
Can I answer that, Aidan?
Go.
Yeah, go for it. Mr.
Sure. Yeah, I don't think there's an absolute number. And I'll just reiterate what I said before in terms of the answer that we gave to Headley as well as to the previous question. So ultimately, if you look at a waste tire depot and you see it full of tires, understand that it's not necessarily tires that are in demand by all processors. The number of processors is not 4. That's, let's say, the number of pyrolysis plants. There's also crummers and cement kilns. So the total number of processors is about 14 in different parts of the country. In the procurement process that we ran, where our intention was to enhance the ability for respondents to be able to put something sustainable together, was very strong. More than 80 respondents, 80. And that for us begins to lay the foundation for something more sustainable. The intention is not to displace existing processes with new. It's to support existing processes in a manner which is, let's say, economically viable, as well as to encourage new processes to come in. But it doesn't help us necessarily if all that new capacity deals with whatever is already in demand. It's how do we stimulate demand for tire categories that are not currently in demand. But there isn't an absolute number. And what we are trying to do is also to create a sustainable level of demand through new processes, while also ensuring that we don't create overcapacity for particular tire types. So the ability to be able to pivot and process multiple tire types was more advantageous than only being able to process one, for instance, etc. So, and then understanding that you have to sort of right-size this to deal with, let's say, the current level of collections. But as we get the amount of diversion rates down, it creates more capacity that needs to be addressed, and you need to ensure that the level of capacity that you create is able to sufficiently address current demand and eat into the backlog without creating a challenge of, let's say, white elephants after the backlog has been cleared. So it's a bit of a balancing act. There isn't an absolute number, but that's the intention and how we approached it. And it seemed to have worked because there was a massive response rate. Like I said, I can't speak to the quality of those responses, but it was encouraging that there was so much interest.
Fantastic. Thanks for that response, Masopa. Next question is an interesting one. Why not mutilate old tires before pickup? Who wants to take that question?
I'm happy to take it, Vishal. So if we read the regulations, there is a duty on collection points and tire dealers to mutilate tires, as well as obviously tire manufacturers that have tires that are rejected. Those should be mutilated. So there is that duty. I think there are, what I understand to be, resource challenges at the dealer level, because obviously that requires additional effort to do that mutilation, whatever form it takes. So, but yes, it is actually written in the regulations. I think again, the purpose of today wasn't to come in with a strong enforcement element. It's more to kind of encourage registration, and then over time to start in I guess communicating the importance of mutilation, because it is right. If you mutilate the tire, then the second-hand or informal tire market would be reduced, because you obviously then can't use that tire at all. So yes, the short is it is in the regulation, so it should be done. The practicalities of it are sometimes a difficult thing to I guess to overcome, and it also I guess requires there to be a form of oversight by the transporters, and I think that will need to be built off over time. I think we don't want an antagonistic relationship just yet. Let's get the tires into the system and then move towards that compliance. But yes, so yes, it is needed. To the extent it's done is not everywhere.
Masopa?
Thanks, Vishal. To just add to what Aidan has said, technically, in terms of the regulations, non-mutilated tires should not be collected by transporters, because they are only allowed to transport mutilated tires. But if that was the case, the amount of tires that we'd be collecting would be significantly less. So I do think it is a discussion that we need to have. Maybe, let's say, with TIPA, on how we facilitate a greater degree of mutilation, because it is in all of our interests that tires that are scrap and are not appropriate for reuse don't enter into the system illegally in another manner, while also facilitating that mutilation happens in a safe way. Yeah, so happy to have that engagement, but technically, in terms of what the regulations currently say, is if the tires are not mutilated, they shouldn't be collected. And we do have to think how we enhance this element, I think, for the benefit of the system as a whole. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Masopa. And I think that's very important in terms of the how. As much as we have a legislative prescript, the question is about the how, and the how around an economy that already has been created. So it is a technical challenge. I get that. Headley, I see you've got a hand raised on the same topic.
On a similar topic, thank you, Vishal, and perhaps again just on this mutilation issue. I think we proposed years ago or made a proposal that the transporters should also be held accountable for transporting of non-mutilated tires, and that hasn't really bled through the system at this stage, as far as I can understand. I may be a little bit removed from it at this point, but I think that in effect, a transporter, as much as the dealer is legally responsible for mutilation of tires that are collected, the transporter should also, under fear of his position, not be picking up unmutilated tires either. There's a second question that I have, and forgive me for hogging a bit of time here, but Masopa referred to second-hand tires, and I think it's quite important to ask this question. There's a deluge of second-hand tires that are clearly arriving in this country via one or other channel, port of entry or whatever, that are also obviously not being accounted for in terms of the waste tire regulations and the 2.30 per kilogram. And this is evidenced by the massive emergence of the second-hand tire dealer market on every street corner. Question: have you, as the Bureau, engaged with ITAC on how to deal with this particular problem at a customs and excise level and border control level. Thanks, guys.
Okay, Masopa?
Thanks, Vishal. Headley, no, we have not. In truth, it's not something that has been sort of brought to our attention. Where the case where we are focused on more is just what is being exported out of the country that shouldn't be exported, and is that a point of leakage? But the one of, let's say, second-hand tire importation is not one that has been raised with us. So maybe we can take that up in a bilateral. But yeah, I would love to hear more about it. We can facilitate an engagement with ITAC. That's not an issue at all. Yeah, we'd just love to know what is it that we would be taking to them. Yeah, and maybe we can just clarify that in a more detailed bilateral discussion.
Sure, I'd be delighted to assist with that via Tipa and Vishal and the team. Thank you.
Thanks.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Headley. Good suggestion. I know we've got that SARS forum that's been created, with amongst other stakeholders, ITAC and the NRCS. So I'm sure that's possibly where it may get presented. But to Masopa's point, I think we've got to be clear in terms of what solution we're looking to resolve. So no, great idea. Let's try and move through the questions in the chat box. Super quick network. Who is in the Cape Town collectors and where is the storage facility? As I noticed, Cape Town has the most depots. Aiden?
No, so Cape Town doesn't. Cape Town's only got one depot. We have the most. I think we have the highest number of dealers registered, if I recall that table that I presented. But we don't. We got one depot that's situated in Atlantis, and then we've got one. If we look at the Western Cape more broadly, we have one in Mossel Bay. So only 2 depots in the Western Cape, and one in Cape Town. It is something that is a concern to us, of course, because you have no redundancy should something cause us not to be able to take tires for even a short period of time in the city. We obviously then have a potential crisis on our hands. So it is something that we are remedying through, like Masopa said, a reimagining of what the depots should contain from an infrastructure perspective, as well as rationalizing how many depots we need to have in each of these particularly big centers. So dealer from a dealer registration, the Cape Town area has the most registered, but not the most depots. The Gauteng province have the most depots.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for that, Aiden. I'm sure there's going to be details shared in the group regarding contacts as well. So feel free to engage on that. The next question from Michelle. It's an important one. Communication. Are there social platforms that can be followed to receive live current updates from the WMB regionally? Example, WhatsApp. Now, just to maybe give some context there, we within TIPA have our members put into groups, and they're broken down into regional groups. And the purpose of that is purely business. It's to communicate business-related information, and I see where this is coming from. So, Aiden, the question is, can we improve the communication perhaps between the department and industry, which is, dealers on the floor? You want to respond to
that? Yes, I mean, it is something that we recognize as lacking. The main contact at the moment still is through the department, and so the Waste Bureau as a unit within DFFE sort of falls under that, but it's not ideal. And we have a draft communication strategy that we prepared, as well as our plans for our own web page that would then enable that kind of communication, at least as a start. Obviously, longer term, using social media would be the preferred option, but at the moment, just capacity wise and managing a social media accounts is not possible. But certainly through a dedicated web page where we could take those kind of communications forward, both from ourselves out and obviously from the stakeholders in that is the plan. And like I said, that has been prepared, and it's just going through the final quality checks with our communications department before it goes live on the internet.
Okay, fantastic, Aidan. Thank you so much for that. Masopa, you want to respond as well?
Just to say, maybe what we can also do, Vishal, is to look to utilize the system that you guys have already in terms of regional groups and WhatsApps, and how we can potentially just make sure that we update you and you share it with your network, information that is relevant to particular regions. I mean, there was an unfortunate situation at the beginning of last year, for instance, where there were only certain tire types that we could take into Atlantis, because Atlantis was full, because of a breakdown of the balers, and something like that, I think, would have been sort of good regional information to communicate. And once that situation was relieved, or as people had questions, it would have given us a channel to use. So maybe we can piggyback off of your system also in the interim, but no pressure to respond now.
Okay, no, fantastic. Thank you, Masopa. I think certainly there's an opportunity between ourselves, yourself, and industry to collaborate a bit closer. Just thinking out loudly, perhaps out of the IAC sessions that we have, short little takeouts from those sessions that talk to indicators, that might be useful information for industry to see how many tires collected in this region, backlogs, challenges, etc., etc. Whatever can communicate or become effective communication that will help to, number one, inform, but two, also help to execute. I think, we'll get to that solution. So from an industry perspective, be assured that we are, working on a strategy, as mentioned by Aidan, and that's a communication strategy to improve it and to help, streamline the process as best as possible, and mitigate some of those challenges. Moving on with the questions, just a suggestion: we cut our old tires on sidewall before leaving for collection. Okay, that's a suggestion. That's a good suggestion and a good practice. I see there's been a response from one of the, okay, we have registered with the Waste Bureau, but have not been serviced with any pickup at all. This is from Point S in Caledon. Does anyone want to respond to that? Aidan?
Michelle, I did respond there, and I gave the gentleman the contact number. Sorry, the contact details of Amanda.
There we go.
What I will do, I just said to Mariki now separately, we will distribute a contact list with the coordinators' telephone numbers, as well as then the managers' contact information to everyone, obviously, who's on the call, as well as who else requests it, and then it'll be clear who would, in which region our various colleagues operate, and obviously then also where the senior managers are responsible.
No, for sure. I see your colleague has been responding to most of the queries and has produced, answers or responses to them. I'll ignore those ones, but back to Arrow Tyres, and that's, is there any way to bring in more transporters, as Western Cape only has 3 transporters?
Yes, so I did see this, and we did go out on we are going out on various procurement processes, or tenders, to procure new service providers. We did go out on a tender for new transporters last year. There was a sort of procedural issue with that tender that caused it to be cancelled. But again, similar to the one with the advice on the processes, if you look at that transport tender, that'll still be available online. You'll see that we're actually trying to get, and I think I looked up the number. We're trying to, so the goal of that tender last year that had to be cancelled was to get 10 transporters for the Western Cape. So yes, we can't do it within the current set of transporters that are contracted to us. We have to go out onto in a sort of competitive procurement process. we are busy with that, and we'll be going out to tender to procure new transporters, and then, like I said, if you look at that document, you'll see what we're aiming to procure for each of the provinces in terms of numbers. And yeah, like I say, the Western Cape, the tender had aimed to get 10 transporters, but at the moment we can't increase that. But yeah, sort of medium term, we will be looking to procure more capacity.
Fantastic, Aidan. Thank you so much for that. I think we all understand the transition that we're going through, and that may come with certain challenges, but it's good to know that the parallel process, hosted by the department, will continue. Maybe just from an industry perspective, it's important to recognize that we may not exactly be where we want to be, but we have certainly come a long way, considering that this was, a first to industry in terms of a recycling initiative introduced, all the way back in 2012. So I think we have come a long way, and with all the challenges and opportunities that present themselves, we are heading in the right direction. The lines of communication are opening up, and I think with that you will find greater take up in terms of participation, etc. from an industry perspective. Be assured, to the DFFE, from our side as industry, we want to collaborate and cooperate much further to be able to make this more effective, and to possibly lead with a solution from our sector. So you have all hands on board from us as industry, and vice versa to the dealers on the floor. Be assured, from a TIPA perspective, we are collaborating as best as we can with the relevant stakeholders to find meaningful solutions, by creating these platforms for you. A couple of key takeouts, driving compliance. I think there's an opportunity. We heard about the whistleblower hotline. If there are malpractices in this very space that you are aware of and you need to report, you can do so anonymously and send that through. We will then have that channeled into the authorities for any further action. That will help us. We all have a collective responsibility to make sure that we limit the industry in terms of malpractices. So do your bit in that regard. And then beyond that, what I would like to do is allow the last opportunity to one of our chairs, either the chair or the vice chair, to say a final few words before we close the session. Either Henry, Johan, or Dylan.
Hi, Vishal. Thanks. I'll take it. Yeah, just thanking everybody for your attendance and the fantastic suggestions and commentary that everybody gave. It's absolutely fantastic to see the industry coming together towards a collective goal of recycling tires. Thank you to all the speakers for your time and wonderful insights. Looking forward to seeing everybody again at the next meeting. Thanks, Vishal.
Okay, with that, we've come to the end of the session. If there are any further questions that you would like to channel, please send through TIPA or directly to the contacts provided in the chat box. Thank you for your time. Thank you for participating. Thank you for engaging, and thank you for the opportunity to present. With that, have a good afternoon, everyone. Cheers.
Cheers, thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.